I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of Australia and their connections to land, sea, sky, and community. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples listening today. Hello, my love, and welcome to the April and Fritz podcast. I am so happy that you're here, and if you're new around here, my name is Brie, and I'm the owner and head designer here at April and Fritz Floral Design. I'm really excited to get stuck into this topic today because it's something I'm pretty passionate about, which is that of floral quotes. So my sister-in-law is getting married in December, and I tell anyone who is a family member or a friend or somebody close to me to get quotes from other florists while also going through the process, with me and my business if they're interested in floral design. And the reason why I do this is that I want them to see that, not only am I serious about my business, but that also my priority is them choosing someone that they are comfortable with and at a price point that they can be comfortable with too. So my sister-in-law went out and got a bunch of different quotes. And for her wedding, it ranged really anywhere between $8K to $20K. And needless to say, this really opened my eyes to what potential clients and consumers are kind of going through at the moment in the market itself. And when I sat down to go through these quotes with my sister-in-law, I'm not going to lie, I was pretty overwhelmed, and I'm in the industry. So I can definitely appreciate why and how this is so confronting for so many people. So I just want to shout that out, that I see you, I get it. But as we sat down and we kind of went through the quotes one by one, I was basically able to help her kind of decode the quotes and understand why there was such a price variation. And it really broadly came down to one or more of these three things: experience, abundance, or overheads. And so today, what I'm going to go through is how you can decode floral quotes when maybe you have multiple quotes in front of you, and in particular, when there's such a large price variation between them. So I want to teach you what I went through with her to help her, and now you too, hopefully, to get a better understanding of why you can get such variations in quotes. And this is going to be super helpful, I think, for anyone who is currently reviewing quotes and getting quite a price variation when maybe they've asked for literally the same thing from multiple florists or designers. And so this can be applied to lots of different events. And so while the experience and the conversation that I had with my sister-in-law regarding her wedding kind of prompted this whole conversation, I believe that if you're getting bespoke floral arrangements or designs created, then it can be applied across the board for the most part. So again, I just want to say thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me. You know how I always say I'm just so grateful to have you listening and spending your earbud time with me. So let's get stuck into the conversation, and I can't wait to tell you all about it. So before we get into things today, I do just want to caveat that there is so much nuance to this conversation. And while, yes, there is an industry standard way of pricing in Australia, there are so many different things that actually influence that final price. And I want to frame this conversation that, I'm not talking to price shoppers here. I'm not talking to the person who simply wants the lowest price. I'm not talking to the person who sends a pic in the DMs and says, hey, how much for this? I'm talking to you, the person who is looking for the right floral designer for them at the right price point for them. And I know that's you because that's why you're here and you're already kind of doing that. And so that said, it's my opinion that, you need to make informed decisions and understand why there might be a price variation. But before we even get into those details, I think we need to think about the trust that you're placing in someone to give you a quote. And it's my belief that I don't actually think you can trust a quote without having had a conversation. You're not going to, get your house painted and just be like, yeah, cool, it's this for this many rooms. Like, okay, well, how big are the rooms? How big are the walls? How high are the ceilings? Like, it just makes sense that if you're getting something that is bespoke, that you are getting a bespoke price. And so in this example with my sister-in-law, she sent out basically a list and got a lot of prices back. Some florists asked for a conversation, and I think that is absolutely warranted. For the list that she sent alone, as I said to you, we're looking anywhere between 8 to 20K. So it's not an insignificant amount of flowers that we're talking here. And so it is important to have a conversation around, what even is the bump in time? My sister-in-law has a 1 hour bump in time and 20 grand worth of florals. Something needs to happen there. And maybe where's the drop-off locations? Again, that would influence your quote. If you're going miles out of the city, for example, and then you have to come back into the city, it's probably going to influence your quote. And so I'm not saying that you necessarily have to have every piece of information ready to go before reaching out to your floral designer, but how can you trust a price that you've been given in the first place when you haven't even had a conversation about it? So getting a quote for, custom event floral arrangements is not the same thing as going into a store and buying a t-shirt where there's a set price. We are creating bespoke, custom, one-of-a-kind arrangements just for you. And so there will be a nuance about the details of it, which will ultimately impact your quote. And so first and foremost, I would recommend, before even reaching out, create a short list of florists and have a conversation with them. Yes, it will be more of an investment of your time up front, but it means that the opportunity for nasty surprises down the track are minimized, which will lead ultimately to a better experience for you overall. So for the remainder of this episode, I'm just going to assume that you've had a conversation about what you want with maybe a few different florists and you're still kind of getting a big difference in the quotes that are coming back. I'm going to walk you through what I would be looking at and how I'd be thinking about them to kind of decipher through all of the information there. So first and foremost, experience. I think it's reasonable to ask the question, how long has this business been around? How long has this florist been doing what they do? What makes them qualified? Now, I'm a relatively new business, so I'm the first person to say that experience is not everything, because I genuinely believe that there are so many new florists and businesses out there that do absolutely fantastic, beautiful, incredible, stunning, amazing work. I really do believe that to my core. But I would also argue that there are plenty of florists out there who are new to the floral world, maybe learning about floral maths, how much labor costs, how much flowers cost wholesale, and all of that kind of thing. And I know that because that was me. And there was a long time when I was underquoting because I didn't fully understand the cost of executing a design. That's just the truth of it. And so as that knowledge grows, it correlates to a higher price point because you understand what goes on to get a design to a finished product. So while there are plenty of people who might look at that initial lower price and think, great, it's so cheap, and kind of benefit off of that, the truth is your event, whether it be a wedding, a funeral, a corporate function, or whatever it is a high stakes day. While there are plenty of florists and other creatives out there who diminish the value of their work to build up their portfolio, which again, I can completely understand because I did the exact same thing, it is not a sustainable business practice. And what you end up getting as a client on the other side of this is a designer who is stressed out, exhausted, and quite frankly, not really enjoying the work, which will have an impact on your design. And you might be wondering how, so let me explain. Just as human beings of the world, we only have so much capacity within our brains, and we're really capped at how many hours are within a day. Trust me, nobody hates this more than me. But when you're not charging an appropriate amount for your time, then you have to substitute that amount from elsewhere. Then what you get is somebody who is distracted because they're not now sitting there with one tab open to you. They have a million tabs open because they have commitments and responsibilities every which way, just trying to substitute that amount. And I know that you want to work with a designer who can dedicate the time and energy that is required to you and to you alone. But the truth is, when designers are spread too thin because they don't charge enough, it's impossible to do. Again, I think there is some, of course, nuance with everyone's capacity, and it will look different for different people and that kind of thing. But I would also argue that this is not exclusive to floristry. I think that this can also extend to other kind of vendor categories too. So whether it be your photographer, your planner, whatever, you want someone who feels confident in what they bring to the table and the level of expertise that they can deliver, whilst also being dedicated to the success of your event. So again, I'm going to assume that you've had a conversation with this person. So I'm already assuming that you feel confident in them being able to do the work. But then I think the question is, do they feel confident? Because I think that's where the experience and the price of either the design fee or the labor or whatever it is should correlate, you know? So on this front, I really encourage you just to think about red flags. Why would somebody not be valuing their time or their experience or their expertise? So just something to consider when you think about experience. Alrighty, let's move on to design. And to illustrate my message here, I want you to imagine that you've spoken to two different florists, you like them both, and you told them exactly the same thing in terms of what you're after. Maybe, let's just say as an example, you want a super lush, ceremony feature using only jasmine vine, and you still get two very different quotes. One might come in significantly higher than the other. The first florist maybe quotes you $3,000 for a ceremony installation, and maybe the other one quotes you like $1,000. I would urge you to look at the design itself from both florists. You should have some kind of a mood board, a mock-up, or some reference photos for you to look at and be able to get a sense of the kind of abundance levels in either design. The $3,000 design probably has double or maybe more the amount of foliage as part of the design compared to the $1,000 design. So that's double or more just the amount of stems that need to be included compared to the $1,000 design. So of course there's going to be a price discrepancy when there's a design discrepancy, because fundamentally the inputs are different. So if you kind of think like a chef for a moment, imagine you're making a burger. One has like a frozen meat patty from the supermarket, and the other has a homemade patty with lots of different flavors and seasonings and all this kind of thing. Which one do you think is going to taste better? Of course, the homemade option. Different recipe means different prices, which means different results. Okay, so that's just to help you understand that. And while what I'm talking about right now maybe seems like a bit of an extreme price variation and should be obvious, there are also times I think when maybe the price difference isn't as significant. So what exactly should you be looking for there? And I would look to the designer's style. So in the example that I mentioned before, let's just say that the first florist has a very lush looking, floral design approach all over their social media and website, and maybe the other is quite minimalist and delicate, then it's fair to assume that the designer is going to align with their style, right? That's exactly why you're hiring them in the first place, because you like their style. What I know to be true is that creatives leave clues about what they love to do. Like my bio on Instagram literally says abundant in it. So my style isn't exactly a secret. And you can assume that the designs will align with that design style. So if you're not clear, it's okay to ask for more reference photos, even if they're not going to be exact, because you should still be getting a sense of what you're getting from working with that designer. And so it's really important that you're happy with the design, whilst also trusting your floral designer and letting them use some creative freedom and let them do their thing. Because again, that's why you've hired them in the first place. All right. And so lastly, I want to talk about overheads. And I want to start this kind of topic by saying that it is deeply nuanced. And when we talk about overheads, a lot of people think, why am I paying for that? Or like, what exactly is that? But think of it as, I guess, the cost for a business to attract and work with the right kind of people for them. And just kind of going back to the inputs into a design for a second, this also extends beyond the flowers. And I'm not saying that there's an additional cost for everything by any means, but I am saying that the inputs that go into a design, maybe the mechanics, the team surrounding it, are not always the same designer to designer as well. So remember what I said about creatives leaving clues earlier? Well, this is exactly what I mean. So take, for example, a florist who maybe doesn't use floral foam because they're a little bit more sustainable in their approach. Floral foam, made out of plastics, stays on this earth forever, costs like $1.50, $2 wholesale for like a brick-sized piece. Whereas a compostable bag that takes the floral waste and not only puts it back into the earth but also nourishes the earth costs about $4.50 each. So you are paying for what you value. And in this example, if you value sustainable practices, that is part of it. And maybe another example is like when it comes to hiring a team. What experience does that team have? How many years of experience? What qualifications do they have? Do they pay their freelancers appropriately? Absolutely. For me, my freelancers are the best and my clients deserve the best. So naturally, I want to be able to pay them more for their work. And I know that my clients want the best. So are overheads important? Yes, of course. There's so much that makes the business run, and that impacts your decision to work with a particular designer too. So even though I'm using the umbrella term overheads, within that, I think there's some really important ones like, the amount the team is paid, sustainability efforts, charitable donations, like working with the community, all of these kind of things. And all of those things fundamentally make that business what it is. And part of the reason why you reached out to that business in the first place is because you loved it. So just some food for thought when you're looking at your quotes. What else beyond the actual flowers themselves could be influencing the cost of it? And so these were just kind of a few of the mental processes that I went through when reviewing the quotes with my sister-in-law. And I think she found this particularly helpful, and I'm really hoping that this was helpful for you too. And if it was, I really encourage you to go over and follow us on Instagram at April and Fritz for more of these kind of conversations, right? My final thoughts on this is that quotes are inherently going to be varied based on all the points I spoke about today. And I think that I have a whole new level of appreciation as to why the process of finding a designer can be tough after going through the process with my sister-in-law herself. But with that said, I also stand by the variations in quotes because ultimately I think it says a lot about the level of service or product that you're going to receive, which is the case across so many industries, right? So if I go back to the chef example, I know that you want the homemade burger, okay? I know you don't want the cheap and nasty frozen patty situation. And so I just wanted to say that I'm so appreciative of this little community for really allowing me to speak on these topics week in and week out. I know that these are really big topics to think about and to consider. And so I just really want to say that I appreciate you. And if you appreciated this conversation, please go ahead and give this podcast a follow. It really is super helpful to get the podcast out to other people who maybe, need to hear these messages, right? So go ahead and share it with your family and friends as well. And hopefully you can get some good event planning karma. All right. I will see you next week. Thank you so much for being here.